It happens frequently in this hobby, guys. We learn things the hard way. I've certainly learned a lot of things the hard way over the years. It typically doesn't end well, but it always serves as something that you can learn from and hopefully not do again in the future. And unfortunately, that's something that happened to my buddy Nate here recently. We're gonna head over to his house today. We're gonna help him finish out his 33-gallon long tank. Last time we put on a CurrentUSA kit. Now we just have to do a little bit of tweaking to the equipment to get the background nice and clear and looking good. It was a mistake that probably could have been easily avoided. It's something that is applicable to a lot of people out there keeping fish in planted tanks. So if anything, hopefully this video can serve as something that can help you prevent having an issue like he had. Welcome back to another episode of Dr. AQUAPROS. Today we're gonna be helping Nate diagnose his problems. He's got a lot of them. Figure out why he killed all of his fish. Well, come here. I'll cheer you up. Oh, baby, what do we got in here? Check it out, bro. I got you the 200, and then I also brought you the 300. Oh my gosh, here it is, the site of the carnage. Nate, I have so many questions.
I have some answers.
Well, the Monte Carlo looks pretty good.
It's got algae, but it's spread, it's growing.
Yeah, I mean, wow, yeah, that did fill in. Look, you got that big old fatty down there?
Yeah.
Ooh, let's get a focus on her, dude.
It's a he.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Okay, still got the air stone in here.
No, I just added it back.
Okay, all right.
I don't normally run it. It's been there for a week.
You had an air stone in here when we...
And I took all the advice you gave me and the advice from random people online, and I pulled it because you shouldn't have an air stone in when you're running CO2.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because what I learned is that it off-gasses all the CO2, which completely eliminates the whole point of having the CO2 running.
That is a true statement, and we will talk about that in a little bit once we turn some lights on and figure out what the heck we're doing today, which we do know what we're doing today. We got Nate a couple of filters, and we're going to be finishing up the tank. When we set it up, last time we were here, we put the CurrentUSA kit on the tank. It's looking good. Nate, do you like it?
I love it. It absolutely is an amazing light with an incredible setup and the connection to the timer and the cycle throughout the day. I love it.
It's good. So he's enjoying that. So thank you, Current, for letting me share this with my buddy. We got some filters for you because the whole point of it is basically to have a really nice looking background, and so we don't want to have stuff like a heater and all kinds of stuff in the way. We're going to work on taking as many things out of this tank as we can, and part of that involves changing up the filtration. So we're going to get rid of these two hang-on back filters. So we're going to be switching over to an Oase filter. We have the FiltoSmart Thermo 200 and the 300 over here. The only difference is really just the flow rate. This one is 217 gallons per hour. This one is rated at 260, and for this 4-foot tank, we're probably going to go with the one that is 260 gallons per hour just because we have to move water across 4 feet. I use the 200 on my 40-gallon breeders. This is a 33-gallon long, so a little bit lower volume, but we're dealing with 4 feet here instead of 3 feet. So we're going to go with the one that has a little bit more of a flow rate just to evenly distribute flow throughout this longer tank, if that makes sense. Either one would probably be fine.
The head height will decrease the flow rate once hitting the tank, and wanting additional flow to go across the entire 4-foot tank, having the option of the higher flow rate might be good. Especially because you were telling me that they are adjustable, so you could I could turn it down, but you can't turn it up from its max.
Yeah, that's true. And so, I mean, this isn't a huge head height issue. It is a couple of feet. Not a huge deal, but, you know, once the filter gets clogged up a little bit, you know, he's not going to be cleaning it every week. You shouldn't be doing that. So just to make sure we have enough flow going across all 4 feet of this tank, we're going to go with the one that has a little bit of a higher flow rate. I know why you guys clicked on this video, so now let me explain what happened to Nate's tank. As Nate is working on the tank right now, I'm going to begin to describe the situation that happened to him. It was a mistake that anybody could have made. I myself have done it on more than a couple occasions, and it involves CO2. So if you guys remember when we were here last, we also hooked Nate up with CO2. This is the first time that he's ever used CO2. I tried to give him all of the best advice I could, but I think I did leave out one very important detail, and that is don't make adjustments to your CO2 and then be gone for an extended period of time. Or in other words, if you're going to make a change of any kind, any little tweak turn of a dial, make sure that you're around your tank for at least a couple hours to make sure everything's still working the way it should be. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's very important for me one day soon to make like a full tutorial video on how to use CO2, not in just the short term, but the long term use of it as well. So over here we have Nate's cylinder. He's got a 5-pound cylinder. He has an Aquatech regulator and a bubble counter. This is all kind of like my old stuff. So this line then runs into the aquarium. You can see he has his diffuser over here, and there's no check valve in the line, but there is a check valve here at the bottom of this bubble counter. I've certainly run systems like this before where you rely on a single check valve at either the bubble counter point or maybe the diffuser itself has a bubble counter integrated into it like the Aqua Neo ones. But anyway, to make a long story a little bit shorter, what happened was he wasn't seeing any CO2 entering the tank, so he made a little adjustment here. And then everything looked good. CO2 started to come out of the diffuser. The bubble counter was looking good. So Nate sat around here for, 5-10 minutes looking at the system. It was working good. He then went to work and came home and all of his fish were dead. It's a story that I hear all too often. It's something that is fairly common to have happen, especially when you're inexperienced with a system like this. But to be honest with you, this isn't something that's difficult to set up or arrange, but the little issues that can come up are ones that you wouldn't really think of, and this is definitely one of them. Typically, when CO2 problems happen, it's always the same thing. It's always too much CO2 gets into the aquarium, and the fish start gasping for air. By the time you notice it, it's too late, and your fish are just gone. Diagnosing this issue can sometimes be a little complicated, and in this case, it is a little funky. We don't know exactly what happened, if there was something going on with the check valve and the bubble counter, like CO2 was getting through it, but the valve wasn't open all the way, and then when he was at work, it then opened up all the way, too much CO2 entered the tank, or something else. We just don't know. Water can also enter the lines and prevent the true amount of CO2 from coming out in the tank. That's probably not what happened here because the check valve is right at the bubble counter and there's no line before that. So it's still a little weird as to what exactly happened here. So after messing with the CO2 system pretty much all afternoon, we finally diagnosed the issue being the in-tank diffuser that we have here. This is an old one that I gave Nate when we set up the system. My prior knowledge of it was that it worked fine, but for some reason this thing was just totally clogged up and it was actually causing the CO2 line from the bubble counter to this diffuser to bulge, and so the CO2 just wasn't getting out of this thing, and that was why it was working a little bit and then all of a sudden it would dump because it would finally unclog itself, but then I guess it would just get clogged back up again because it was behaving the way it was after he had the issues. I guess the moral of the story is don't use old equipment, and every little part of the CO2 system is important. You want to make sure everything is working the way it should. In any case though, guys, when CO2 rapidly enters the tank, a couple things happen. One, the amount of oxygen relative to CO2 goes way down, so you end up having a ton of carbon dioxide in the water and not a lot of oxygen. There's competition for the solubility of those two things, and oxygen just can't compete, and they essentially suffocate, which is absolutely horrible. But on top of that, the pH also rapidly drops. Nate didn't check the pH when he got home, but I bet you it was probably below 5. And on top of that, the drop in pH caused by the CO2 actually causes more carbon in the equilibrium to shift towards CO2, which then feeds back, and it's just kind of an endless feedback loop of pH dropping, more CO2, less oxygen available for the fish, and it's not good. So not only did Nate lose the majority of his cardinals and his green neons in this tank, he also lost some of his cory cats. He did, however, manage to save his betta fish and a bunch of the pygmy cories that he has down in here somewhere. So not everything passed away. That's, I guess, the silver lining in all of this. And what makes this whole situation suck even worse is that Nate wasn't comfortable setting the CO2 back up because he, went through this, and I don't blame him, but that ultimately caused the tank to basically fall apart and get totally unbalanced on him. He has a lot of algae in this tank, so he basically has to restart. He's not going to be tearing down the tank and completely redoing it, but he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to get the tank back to the way it was before this whole thing happened. I don't know about you guys, but I think Nate's setup is a heck of a lot cleaner now. The combination of the current Serene kit with the built-in heater filters that Oase has, I think go perfectly together and just make for one of the cleanest setups that you can get. We appreciate both Current and Oase very much for being channel sponsors and help making a lot of this stuff possible. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Is this a setup that you guys would love to have? I know his tank has a lot of rebounding to do, but we'll go in and check in on it in a couple of months and see how things are doing. I think his tank is going to get back on track here really soon. Before we left, we went to the local fish store and we got him a diffuser that actually worked, and so he has CO2 back running up on his tank. All the equipment's the same. We just changed out and got a new diffuser that would actually let CO2 come out of it. So kind of a weird thing. I learned something, he learned something, and hopefully you guys did too. And if you guys enjoyed today's video and you're new, think about hitting the subscribe button as well as the like button. It helps out the video and the channel a ton, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.